Yo, I want to talk about a concept I have called the Malachi Chain, and why I call this concept the Malachi Chain is because of the last book in the Old Testament, which is Malachi or Malachi, my messenger, Malachi. Um, there is a dilemma, and it's probably a dilemma that happens to every person, and specifically here every male in a patrilineal lineage, which is, do I carry on the traditions and attitudes and work of my family, or do I go on and split off from that and do something totally new? Now, since this is referencing the Bible, I'll talk about the attitudes of characters in the Bible. There are definitely some characters in the Bible who do seem to venerate keeping the patrilineal lineage, or keeping the values of the forefathers. It's like the entire Abrahamic tradition in general is about keeping a patrilineal tradition. That's why we pass down the scriptures and have the concept of patriarchal forefathers to begin with, biblical patriarchs, starting with Abraham. But Abraham in himself, I would say, broke the Malachi chain from where he was, from the city of Ur. I think he came out of and followed God into a totally different land, and became the forefather, the patriarch of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and more. At the underpinning of Western civilization, and also of the Levant, and all of the myriad Abrahamic traditions that have spread throughout the world, even beyond the Western world in the Levant. The Malachi chain is ultimately the patriarchy, and I call it I call breaking the Malachi chain is deciding to not go forth with the patrilineal tradition, breaking off and starting your own thing. So, though we have, like in the Ten Commandments from Moses, from Moshe, there is the commandment of honor thy father and mother, which sets up that's pretty much like staying in the patrilineal form, and deciding to not break the Malachi chain, and to continue the Malachi chain into the future, connecting your forefathers with your offspring, or whoever is influenced by you ultimately. And so there's a great tradition of, tradition itself is keeping the Malachi chain intact, but there's also very important biblical and church history figures that broke the Malachi chain. For example, Jesus Christ, in a certain sense, broke the Malachi chain because all of the traditions coming down, even though he was the Word made flesh, he is the Word made flesh, he put forth a juxtaposition to honor thy father and mother, which is, if you do not love me before your father and mother and everyone else, you're not worthy to follow me. So it's like throwing down the gauntlet on the Malachi Chain, and what the let me explain why I'm calling this the Malachi Chain. There are two big warnings made at the end of the Old Testament and at the end of the New Testament, and in their most strict forms, they're kind of like curses, or they're very strong warnings that pin these books together. And I think that those warnings, or that include a blessing and a curse in them, is very important to the survival of Scripture, both the Old Testament and the New Testament. So the last book of the New Testament is the book of Revelation, and at the end of that, it talks about, if the conditions, if you add anything or take away anything from the book, which is a message to any and all translators, as well as any and all people reading it or teaching and preaching it. The warning is very strong, and the imagery is very, very visual and harsh. So if you're wondering what I mean about that, just read the last chapter. It's relatively short, of the book of Revelation in any Bible that is intact, with all the books, all the canon books in it. But at the Old Testament, it kind of does the same kind of thing. But the difference is, in the book of Revelation, the warning at the end of that has to do with adding or subtracting from the word. But in Malachi, last book of the Old Testament, there is a warning about, it's like warning children and parents to stick together. Don't break the chain. Don't break the tradition between them. And that's what I call the Malachi Chain. And in societies that keep moving forward, passing down wisdom from generation to generation with a continued culture, the Malachi Chain is intact. But in societies that have revolution, where something, whether it occurs from the inside or it's something that's inspired from without, by whatever influence it is, we've seen major revolution at the end of the 1700s throughout the Western world, and at the beginning of the 1900s, with the communist cultural revolution in not just at the beginning of the 1900s, but in the mid 1900s as well, in China, in North Korea, and or Korea in general, and Vietnam, and other communist countries. And it started, that started in Russia, and started with the ideas of Marx, and it was arguably paid for by capitalist interests in some ways. There's like this symbiotic relationship between capitalism and communism. But those kind of revolutionary periods, that the children are actually turned against their parents, and they break the Malachi Chain. That's what a revolution is, in some senses, is breaking the Malachi Chain, breaking the tradition. And we see that in the world today, where there are these elite forces doing all sorts of stuff to create revolution, and you can say, like, oh, it's being advocated by Bill Gates and Fauci, and they're talking about, don't celebrate holidays anymore, don't have handshakes. They're destroying culture, and we still have time. If you don't know that that's what's happening, please wake up to that. But there's also like things like George Soros, who is paying a lot of money, and a lot of people are very wealthy people are paying a lot of money to foment revolution on the ground with movements like Black Lives Matter Antifa, and we're seeing that in this country, United States, in 2020 so heavily, and so many people have not been ready for it, and a lot of people are still in denial of not even just what's happening, but what has already happened. And I find in me there is perhaps an equal amount of wanting to keep the Malachi chain intact and wanting to break the Malachi chain. And the biblical part of it, I've felt since I was a child that the Malachi chain was already broken in a certain sense, in that I was brought up 12 years of Catholic school, but the Christian tradition in terms of passing down the scriptures, they passed down the book, but they had absolutely no or very, very, very little understanding of the book in any language, or like any parts of it, or the wisdom within. It's just, it wasn't very understood, but at least it was passed down. So I kind of felt like the Malachi chain was not necessarily broken. I think it's being broken now all over the place. It's revolutionary period. But the Malachi chain was not in good condition when I inherited it. And I didn't understand that. Like, there was a lot of expectation, I felt, towards me to do things like read the Bible and learn these stories. When the people passing it down to me and having those expectations didn't do it themselves. So there's a lot of hypocrisy that I saw from a young age. And it's like been embarrassing for me at times to be past this Malachi chain, but I have to teach the people passing it down to me that, like, look, what you tried to pass down, acting like you knew what it was, you don't know what it is. Here's what it is. And upon saying, here's what it is, there's no familiarity from these people, because they assume they knew what it was, but they have no idea, very little idea. So there's part of me that wants to reject all of that, but it's hard for me to reject all of that, because I don't want to throw out scripture of the Abrahamic religions. I don't want to throw it out. I know it too well. It's too much of a part of me, even though I don't feel that it has been understood in very many ways by the people who passed it down to me. So the Malachi chain is in a very precarious position in the world, and I can definitely feel that within myself, because they're, in a certain sense, taking and preserving the traditions that I was passed. I don't want to pass down the ignorance of the things that I'm passing down, because I think that's something that I inherited. Is I inherited the materials, but I did not inherit the understanding. The understanding is something that I've had to build for my entire life. And now I'm at a point where I do think that I can revitalize or be a part of revitalizing the culture, especially Christianity. However, I don't know if it deserves it. I don't know if it will take it. I don't know if I will be as alone as I've been in it for my life, being around professing Christians who, in my view, don't have any idea what they're talking about, and don't even suspect that they don't have any idea what they're talking about. But in order to wage something like that, I have to be able to turn that back on myself and look at myself in the mirror, as I am now recording this video, understanding that if I haven't taken the speck out of my own eye with not understanding, it's easy to project that onto others. But it's been very frustrating in my life to talk to people about the things that they profess to believe, because I always feel, or a lot of time feel, that I'm talking to fakes. I'm talking to those who pay lip service, and it does remind me of the Pharisees in Jesus' time, where the religious leaders didn't know what the hell they were talking about, thought they did, stood in the position that is only deserved by those who understand, without understanding, and didn't let anyone else understand either. And I've seen that for my entire life. So it's like I don't know if the people who pass down the husk of the religions, that could pass down the book. This is a Portuguese Bible that I just found in a little book library. I don't know if they even want it, because I don't know if they know what it is. They expected me to study it, but I don't understand why, because they don't want it. If I bring it back to them, they don't want it. So it's got to go either to others, or I'm just going to throw it away and internalize what I could from it and let my culture die, because it seems that my worry about breaking the Malachi Chain or not, the Malachi Chain might already be broken. So that's my personal experience with it. But I guess it's like, here I'm interested in introducing this concept of breaking the Malachi Chain. And also it's like giving a warning, as the book of Malachi and the book of Revelation do, which is, if you pass down something and you do not understand it, be prepared. Be prepared, not necessarily for what you're passing down to be rejected and judged, but be prepared for you to be rejected and judged.